In a major update, it turns out that Saturday saw a staggering 2,169 No Kings protests, drawing approximately 4 to 6 million Americans. That is roughly 2% of the entire American population in what's now considered the largest one-day protest in U.S. history. So, to summarize what happened here, Donald Trump wanted to host a massive military extravaganza a la Bastille Day in France or Kim Jong-un in North Korea. We don't do that in America because it's weird and fascistic. Donald Trump insisted on doing it anyway. That spurred counter-protests across the country. The counter-protests drew more people than ever before in American history, bringing 2% of the total U.S. population into the streets. And meanwhile, Trump's parade, which was the impetus for all of this, drew such a sparse crowd that the most viewed moment from the entire event was this. That creak of the tires might actually haunt Donald Trump until the day he dies. Do you know how quiet a parade has to be to literally hear the tires turning? Like, I've been to funerals, really sad ones, that were somehow more jubilant than Donald Trump's birthday parade. And of course, the Trump team is well aware of how embarrassing all of this is, which is why Trump's communications director, Stephen Chung, came out to rewrite history on behalf of Dear Leader. He wrote, "The so-called No Kings protests have been a complete and utter failure with minuscule attendance. It is sad Democrats and liberals would rather support criminals and illegals instead of celebrating the 250th anniversary of our great U.S. Army and Flag Day. But many more Americans are commemorating our brave military men and women who have given the ultimate sacrifice and those who continue to serve our country." Now, first of all, a complete and utter failure with minuscule attendance? Yeah, so, Gavin Newsom tweeted a video that I think pretty adeptly debunks this little bit of wish casting by the Trump team. Second of all, even if the No Kings protest did have minuscule attendance, which of course it didn't, but humor me here, you pretty much surrender your ability to make that claim when these are the images coming out of your rally. I can't feel it. I'm gonna be okay, 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 alright. It's about that time. I need a sentimental song. You think I see you walking in my valley? I see you talking about my stuff. I don't give a word. Too much. I'm gonna get like somebody. Wanna get oh, wanna get down. Oh, that's how I feel right now. Now, I should note that 200,000 people were expected to attend in Washington, D.C. And look, in fairness, it wasn't a total loss. Hundreds of people still got to enjoy the show. But in general, it's probably not great that there were as many parade participants as there were spectators. Now, in fact, it was such a failure that Republicans in Congress are now having a tough time trying to justify all of this in the media.
You know, I'm all for the president appearing and doing enlistment ceremonies at military bases. I've been with the president at Dover to receive home our dead soldiers, and so those who have been killed in action, and to mourn their loss. But I just never liked the idea of the parade, because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the only parades I can remember are Soviet parades for the most part, or North Korean parades. And the parades I remember from our history were different. You know, everybody remembers that famous scene of the soldier, you know, dipping the girl and kissing the girl in New York in a ticker tape parade. But we were rejoicing the end of war, and we were rejoicing our soldiers coming home. And that absolutely ought to be commemorated and discussed every year, Memorial Day, Veterans Day. But we never glorified weapons so much. And I know he means well. I don't think he means for any of this to be depicted in another fashion, but I'm just not a big fan. And then there is the cost. I mean, we're $2 trillion in the hole, and just an additional cost like this, I'm not for it.
Frankly, at least if it was well attended, then maybe you can make the case that it was worth it. But now you've got a parade that cost a staggering $50 million, that was decidedly un-American and weird, and that no one bothered to watch. And so it's no surprise that no one is falling over themselves to try and defend this atrocity. It's also worth noting that the No Kings protest helped make Donald Trump's second term to this point the most protested in U.S. history, with over 15,000 protests since he took office in January. At this point in 2017, there were only about 5,000 protests against him thus far. And I should remind you that that energy in 2017 led to Democrats taking the House in midterms by the biggest margin in modern American history, flipping 41 seats and switching the gavel to Democratic control. And now Americans are protesting at a rate 3 times as high as 2017, which of course doesn't bode well for Trump and Republicans in midterms. Meanwhile, the day after his failed parade, this is what Trump has to say.
A fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful. And so I asked if they gave it 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How did they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night, but it was beautiful.
In other words, the day after this guy basically lit $50 million on fire, his message is that the news is wrong and that climate change isn't real. It really is no wonder that people didn't want to go to his birthday parade. In fact, it didn't even really look like he wanted to be at his birthday parade.
In 1914, years of escalating competition between European alliances culminate in the outbreak of the First World War. The two sides engage in a savage war of attrition, defined by opposing trenches, barbed wire.
That might explain the squeaky wheel phenomenon. Even the birthday boy, who demanded that taxpayers give him a $50 million gift so that he can feel special, could barely keep his eyes open. Perhaps if he wanted some enthusiasm, he might have considered coming to the protest that I was at in downtown Los Angeles, since it seemed to have a little bit more, energy. The only downside for Trump here is that the only events where people are actually enjoying themselves just so happen to be the same ones where people hate him. Trump did mention that he wanted to be a unifying president, and he's managed to do that. Only problem is that they're unified in opposition to him. So I'm sure that a very butthurt Donald Trump and his very butthurt administration will spend the next few days trying to rewrite history in deference to their God King, and that we'll see some Sean Spicer level gaslighting about the millions upon millions of people who came to watch Trump's historic military parade. But while these people might lie, your eyes don't. And in this case, neither do your ears. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.